People enjoy his music so much that they tend to sit around the piano as opposed to further down and sit and listen. You know, they physically turn their chairs and sit and listen like it's a concert.
I just remember walking off that stage, and as if by magic, my arm just lifted up, and I gave the clenched fist salute. And it felt so good because I felt a roar from the crowd as I did that, and just looked around, and everybody was on their feet for all of us. And it was an unforgettable moment, one that I just can't... When I go to sleep, I think of that moment, you know.
I first met Mike years ago, must have been 79, 80, 81, that period. I was working as a barman at the Carlton Hotel, and he was with Scott Free playing at the top of the Carlton, which was the nightclub. And after I finished my shift, we'd all go up to the top of the Carlton and there go and have a last drink and watch the last set. And of course, we all met the musicians, and we got on famously, and we've known each other since. When I started the jazz workshop, I didn't realize that he was teaching here. So it was a great, you know, a reunion. It was fantastic.
Mike Perry is a jazz pianist who was born in Port Elizabeth. His musical career spans over more than 45 years. Mike has been living with his family in Cape Town for most of his life and remains very close to the music circuit. Today, Mike Perry's busy schedule includes performing at five-star hotels and passing on his musical talent to students both young and old at the Jazz Workshop, the oldest music institution in Cape Town.
I used to listen extensively to what little overseas music was available on the SABC in those days. So Lorenzo Mark's LM radio was very popular with us. So my mom got me some music lessons there because she played the piano quite nicely. Also not really a reader. She was more of a busker, and there were some family sing-songs, not always of a successful nature. And we sang very badly together in the car usually. At university, I heard Dollar Brand, Abdullah Ibrahim for the first time, and also started attending jazz concerts regularly at the Greenpoint Art Centre. Round about this time also I met and took lessons from Merton Barrow, who was in many ways my mentor, and showed me what I really needed to know and set me up for my next 45 years of professional music. By teaching, in Zen terms I suppose, teaching without teaching, because they say that there's no teaching, there's only learning. Well, there are people who set you up to learn the correct things that you really need to do, and that was what Merton gave me.
Merton started it 50 years ago, 1965?
1965.
65 it was.
You must know that it was a very difficult time for this country at the time when we started. There was no place where we could mix and play music together, really. So I thought this was about time that I made my effort to try and sort out things from a musical angle. A language that everyone can study, no matter the race or the creed or whatever. So I started at the workshop at my house. And in that time, a lot of people came to see us. One of them was Mike Perry. He was a man that was I immediately saw, so talented and hungry to learn about music.
When I taught for him briefly in my 30s and met Winston at the workshop, Merton's influence was always there, like a guide, that if you had a problem with a certain chord or voicing a sound, Mert was always there, the merchant of music in a way.
Through a new arrangement of his.
In fact, one of his best pupils, students, John Lockwood, who made it in America on the East Coast, New York, Boston, and toured with Joe Henderson and various other people. Now he's older, he's teaching as well, And he sent Cynthia, Merton's wife, a letter recently saying, what I'm teaching is exactly the same as what Merton taught me 40 years ago. And I can say the same thing. I've never needed anything more than what he knew, and what he knew is so wide and so encompassing of so many different styles.
Mike Perry has played in jazz bands and top hotels around the world. This wealth of experience has fed his music and performances so that listening to him play is always a memorable occasion.
It's so nice to be working in hotels at home because I live at home. Hotel rooms get a bit boring after a while. One hotel becomes like the next, particularly when you have a circuit of them like I did in Switzerland. You become a bit dependent on the hotel. I far prefer living at home and gigging in hotels.
Don't feel like rain. It snows that stretch down south will never be the same, I think.
I think so.
I'm Jacques Mulman. I'm the general manager at the Southern Sun Cape Sun. I've worked for Tsogo Sun for many years, and in Cape Town specifically for the last 20 years. Having moved around in the country a little bit, and I'm back in Cape Town. Awesome to be here.
What's his name? John Basie stuff. Dave Brubeck. That was the era where this was. There we go, guys. Take 5.
My first day after seeing Mike here, you know, I went home and said to my wife, you know, guess who's playing at the Cape Sun? And Mike Perry. So we had our first wedding anniversary 17 years ago at the Table Bay. And Mike knows that I'm a big favorite. Now, this is maybe not always the type of music he plays, but I'm a big fan of Les Mis, the musical, and one specific song, Colette's song. And when my wife and I sat down, he played it. And 20 years later, as I walked into the breakfast room here, he plays it again. And I think he has a theme song for everybody. So if you walk into the breakfast room, you get your song and you're kind of welcomed. I don't know how he knows that you're there, but he knows.
This is what I heard, you know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, eh? The sounds the same as it did at that time, eh? And it still carries on in the same vein, eh? That's why I love this guy so much, eh?
Actually, 1982, we were together at the opening of this hotel.
Yeah.
He judges the crowds and the mood of the breakfast room. If it gets busy, he kind of tends to play a little bit busier, and when it's quiet, it calms down a little bit. So he literally kind of sets the tone of how, you know, how people are experiencing their meals. And when he plays here in the lobby, it's the same thing. He definitely creates the atmosphere.
One learns a lot to play for people because you are being employed by somebody. You're not an independent recording artist. You're not playing concerts. That's the first thing you learn. It's not a concert. Keith Jarrett says there's 3 things. There's you, there's the music, there's the people you're playing to, and there's the people you're playing with. And they're all equally important. They're very important, those people that you're playing to. So at least give them something to hang on to. Even if you are going to improvise wildly for half an hour, give them the tune, give them a basis that they can at least have a chance to understand what's going on. From my personal knowledge, the SABC in Sea Point was entirely devoted to white music. So-called transcription material, where white musicians would recreate Glenn Miller charts from the 40s and 30s and get paid, and yet musicians like Ezra Ngakana and Winston Mankunku were left in Guguletu in Nyanga without any work at all. And also there were myths that were propagated around them, that because they were black, they had a different sense of time, the joke of African time. Winston was always incredibly punctual, by the way, or that they were drunkards. And these myths were actively propagated. And the net result is that session work, paying very nicely, thank you very much, was you could have put a whites-only badge or sign on top of all those sessions that took place.
Mike met the legendary Winston Mankunku in 1976. The saxophonist ignited the flame of anti-apartheid resistance in him. Together, they embarked on their own battle and composed many songs, including struggle anthems, which saw South Africa through the unrest.
Winston was about 8 or 9 years older than me. He'd been through so much more than I'd been through. His encyclopedic knowledge of jazz standards completely floored and humbled me. And so naturally, the relationship, certainly in the beginning, was that of a mentor and his lightie, as it were. He would be very strict with me at times. Merton and some other musicians applied for a license, as you had to do, to work with an African musician at the City Hall at a big concert. Permission was denied. They reapplied. Then a limited form of permission was granted, that he could perform, but he could not be seen. And also that the name Mankunku was far too ethnic, and the name Winston Mann, like the white Herbie Mann, the flautist, the New York flautist. Winston Mann was considered okay, M-A-N-N. Mankunku was, again, too African. So the performance took place notoriously, I can't say famously, with a white curtain preventing Winston from being seen. Yet you could see his silhouette and, of course, hear his fantastic sound. That story has been often repeated. It happened in the 60s, before I came to Cape Town. I heard about it when I arrived. Yakaling Komo, which, as you know, means the bellowing bull, or if you like, idiomatically, the yoked bull, the spirit of the African people that had been downtrodden and yoked and suppressed for so long that it was crying in pain. It was the nation that was crying in pain. And that's why Yakaling Komo, even today, is the 4th best recognized African tune, South African tune, ever recorded, which is quite an achievement considering I think it was recorded in 1964 when Winston was a very young man, 24. Robbie Jansen played before us at UCT Jamison Hall, and unfortunately the men in blue arrived and stopped the concert. Trevor Manuel gave a great speech. We sang Nkosi Sikelele Africa, which was illegal, of course, at the time, and walked out through, what do you call it? It was like one of those initiation things where you run through and everybody hits you. What do you call it? Of what Winston called cutlighties from up north, with submachine guns, and all the rifles were parked outside and 3 helicopters. That's how important music was to them. And then knew who they were. And under this threat, the musicians walked away from that, what should have been another great concert. Well, Robbie played great, of course, but the concert was stopped.
Yeah, that's Winston. Hi.
How are you?
All right.
My name's Matthew.
Okay, I'm Mike. Let's speaking to the mic. Are you also a pianist?
Yes, I just started, so yeah.
Okay. I'd like to hear you play something, Matthew.
I'll try.
Okay, you'll try.
Tulasana, which was a very gentle song, praying for patience, really. The image is one of a mother holding her child and cradling the soul of that child in a tender kind of way. saying, be patient, darling, everything will be okay. It wasn't a long step to taking that to also saying to the African people, be patient, things are going to come right eventually.
Nice, just a little bit more. Now, second finger there, thumb there. Now, right, flat, it's also inverted. You know that? Yeah, that's right.
He's a really cool dad. He's really chilled. He's sometimes strict, but like most of the time he's really cool and I like him. Hi, my name's Theo. I'm 15 years old. I'm Mike Perry's son, and my favorite sports are water polo and rugby. Say, for instance, it's a nice song, like with lyrics, he'll like it in the beginning, and then if it goes into electrical, like house, he won't like it, and I'll say it's nice, and he'll and then he'll give me an example of his music, and then he'll be like, this is real stuff, and you should listen to this more, and I'll be like, whatever.
Bring my little boy here, Theo, he's not so little anymore. As you've seen, he enjoys it too, because he surfs a bit, and so it's a wonderful contrast to the life of hotels, gigs, where there's people on top of you all the time, where you've got to act in a certain way. Here you can kick back and just be yourself.
12th, it's Carl's birthday next week, on the 12th, so I'm gonna go sleep over at a friend's house. And then on the 10th, I don't know, there's a party happening, so yeah.
Theo's very popular and has got lots of friends, so I take what I can get from him, you know.
Like sometimes he'll be saying, like, you're not allowed to go out, or you have to do something before you go out, and if I've been like naughty or something, yeah.
We do enjoy ourselves with briars and walks down to the river, walks to the beach. And now and again we even enjoy a little bit of homework.
My dad says, work hard, play hard. So if I work hard at school, the results will come like later in life.
I love bringing my beautiful dog here. I like the feeling of openness. Spend most of my life playing piano in rooms. So to have this around and the sea, just timeless and no constraints, beautiful. And Cape Town, Chester, the best. Come. Yeah. My dog is called Chester. Yeah. And he's a Newfoundland, so that's the other big reason. He loves water because the breed actually thrives on water. They were bred for water, rescue, sea. Good question. And he's a wonderful companion. With that kind of, you know, that rush that... I don't get sad easily. I've learned not to. I was sad a little bit sometimes in Switzerland being away from Cape Town, being away from what I love. But sometimes it's horses for courses, and you do what you got to do.
I think he's worked really hard in his life, and to get where he is like pretty impressive for me. Yeah.
Just improving as a musician, extending repertoire. Becomes slightly more difficult to add new stuff as you get a bit older, so that's hard work. And also, luckily, I've got the lighties, the youngsters that I'm teaching, who come along and say, hey, can you work out this Coldplay thing for me? Can you do this Adele thing? And that's great fun. So that's great. I don't feel any frustration or that it's a challenge that I can't meet.
he works quite a lot and he gets tired and then he gets like in a bad mood, and I don't like it when he's in a bad mood because I want him to be in a good mood like always. But like, yeah, I think he should start slowing down, but he doesn't really want to.
The Jazz Workshop is a fantastic institution. It's we have the experience of 50 years of teaching, you know, to go back to and to draw from. But everything is fun. You know, we do enjoy ourselves here. You know, it's not an academic thing where it's rigorous and it has to be pushed. You know, different people come to us for different reasons. You know, some want to be professional musicians, others just want to learn to play. And between the two, we make a light atmosphere, so it's always enjoyable. It's great. I love working here. I'm devoted to it.
He's become a wonderful piano player, wonderful person, absolutely reliable. Everything he does, very supportive. I'm really pleased to have him here, working for the past, not working, teaching people in his special way for the past 15 years. So it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope he'll be here for the next 15.
There are people always, you know, who've heard of us, and because most of the stuff has been word of mouth, they've heard that so-and-so is a good teacher or such and such is a good teacher, and they'll phone and they'll say, you know, I hear Mike Perry is a great teacher. Or, is there a chance of getting a lesson with him? Yeah, of course it happens, yeah.
I don't think we've seen the end of Mike yet. For the next 20, 30 years, I hope to hear, you know, many more of what he has to offer.
Music is liquid emotion. I think it was Nietzsche, a philosopher, who said that music is the greatest of the 5 or 6 art forms. Because unlike painting, where you've got to take, and it's not immediate, you've got to mix your paints, you've got to paint the picture. Sculpture, you've got to bang it, you know, you separate it from it. With music, you're part of it. And what you're putting out, that's the liquid aspect of it, goes out, and it can affect other people. Your emotions are going out to other people in the air. That's what is, well, I know that contradicts the word liquid, but I'm sure you know what I mean.